So right now I'm going to be doing a TED Talk style talk at this amazing yearly event called VANTalks. There is a story that is told during our family gatherings, and it's a story that I must have heard over 1,000 times. But every time I hear this story, I can't help but to grab a seat and keep my eyes glued onto the storyteller. And the story goes something like this. The year is 1942, and it's the darkest hour of a cold, cold night. We find my grandfather, who's a 19-year-old kid at this time, lying in a field of mud and bodies somewhere near the city of Leningrad in one of the worst battles of World War II. He's cold, he's wet, and out of the 12,000 Russian soldiers that were ordered to attack the Nazi front lines that morning, he is one of maybe 12 that's still alive. He's lying there and he's waiting for night to come. Nighttime means that maybe he can get up and run back to the cover of his own front lines in the cover of the dark. But when night comes, the Germans start shooting their flares, and it's so bright outside that standing up and running would have been suicide. He lies there all night and he puts his chin on the back of his palm to keep his face out of the mud, and just as he does that, a bullet grazes his hand just inches from his face. The Germans are so close, he can hear their shouts as officers bark orders from the trenches. Any moment now, they'll find him in that field and finish him off. He wishes for a rifle, a shovel, anything at all to defend himself for even a few more seconds of life. But earlier that morning when they were ordered to attack, there was more men than there were guns. So my grandfather was handed a pack of 5 bullets and ordered to run with the hope of finding a rifle somewhere along the way. He lies there all night, and when morning finally comes, a German soldier finds him in that field, kicks him in the ribs, sticks a rifle to his forehead, and then he says something to him that ultimately changes the life of this 19-year-old kid. He says, I don't know, speaking in broken Russian, he says, I don't know who it is that you pray to, but I've been shooting at you all night, and I could not hit you. With that, my grandfather's pulled from the ground and marched off to serve 4 years in some of the most brutal and horrid concentration camps that our history has ever seen. But there, in some of the darkest hours of our world, a time when war, hate, and division were keen, this 19-year-old kid now believed that his life was spared for something greater, and he started to live that way. Surrounded by young men from all over the world, from America, Britain, Poland, Russia, of course the Jews that were there, he gave up his own breadcrumbs to those on the verge of starvation, took the place of others and received beatings that he didn't deserve. And just when it seemed like there was nothing else to live for behind those barbed wire fences, he found purpose and hope in serving others. From his story, our family has accepted the following principles into the way that we live our life to this day. Defend the weak, protect the fatherless, respect your elders, and contribute to your community. Isolation, a lack of purpose and hope, a dim or unseen future can be a problem for any individual. And in turn, they can become a problem to society. You see, we all have needs. We have the needs to have our talents acknowledged, our voices to be heard, our skills to be noticed and appreciated, and to be able to contribute to society in our own unique way. But when we fail to find a way to fulfill these needs, our enthusiasm, our value for life slowly starts to diminish. Uninspired, unmotivated, and selfish people can make for a crumbling community. Today, we have no barbed wire fences to keep us in. We have no torture to kill our dreams. And we hardly have any limitations at all, yet somehow, every year, millions of Americans are becoming depressed, facing confusion and lack of purpose in life. The worst part is, our teenage boys, our teenage girls are doing the same thing. You see, you and I as adults may have already settled and accepted the way things are. But that same pressure, that same confusion applied to a teen can do much more damage. When they attempt to find their place in this world and they fail, they can oftentimes find a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Every pair of shoes here represents a Clark County teen who took their own life just in the past 24 months. Now sure, the problems, the reasons for making this choice are going to differ across each individual. But it just goes to show you that so many of us are in need of hope and a future. Something to fight for, something to stand for, something to believe in. My grandfather was that 19-year-old kid in a concentration camp, and he believed that his life had purpose. He fought for every second of it. Today, our teens are giving up, and they're taking their own. You know, they often ask these teens that attempted to commit suicide but failed, they often ask them why they wanted to do it. And you know what the most common response is? I felt like nobody cared for me. I felt like nobody noticed me. I felt like the world would be a better place without me. Truth is, most teens won't take their own lives. Instead, they'll find other ways to fill that gap, fill that void, and unfortunately, that's oftentimes in the form of trouble. Whether it's coming together in flash mobs, storming 7-Elevens, and vandalizing everything in sight, or worse, it's playing the knockout game. The knockout game is something we saw in the fall of 2013, where we saw teens all across our country involved in this game that went viral, where they would run up and they would slug unsuspecting senior citizens or homeless people on the street. And the way that you win this game is by knocking them out. It was disgusting, and we all typically have the same reaction when we hear about this kind of behavior. At first, it's anger, and then it's confusion. We ask ourselves, what is wrong with these kids? What is wrong with society? We'll shake our heads and we'll say things like, things just aren't the way that they used to be. When I saw this, all I could think about was, what if that happened to my mom on one of her morning walks? You know, we're all typically raised with certain rules and principles, and for the longest time, I was beginning to think that the only rule that stuck to me from my own childhood was more of a trick that my mom used on us when she wanted to stop us kids from eating too much sugar. She would tell us, if you eat too much sugar, your butt cheeks are going to stick together. This rule always got my attention, and to this day, I have to make sure that everything's okay back there if I have a big donut. But in the fall of 2013, at the height of our anger and frustration with what we were seeing going on in our country and with our teens, my brothers and I, along with a few friends of ours, were suddenly reminded of another principle that we were raised with a long time ago. Defend the weak, protect the fatherless, respect your elders, and contribute to your community. It was a reminder for us that as powerless as we felt at that time, as angry as we were, that we could do something about it, and that we should do something about it. We were determined to prove that this wasn't a teen problem or a generation problem. This was a purpose problem. Like my grandfather taught us, every single one of us can be the change that we claim we wish to see in our community. It only takes courageous action, a willing spirit, and a loving heart. So, we stole this idea of what the word flash mob represented, and we created Flash Love. Flash Love is an organization that has taken the city by storm. It's inviting people of every culture, religion, age, gender, background, color to come together, take massive action, and be the change that they wish to see in our community. Our friend Juan can tell you all about Flash Love. Juan is a kind, young high school kid who's going to do amazing things in this world. But not so long ago, before Flash Love got to him, Juan was in a tough place. Juan's father didn't think too much of him. Kids at Juan's school didn't think too much of him. And because of them, Juan didn't think too much of himself. Juan tried hard to fit in somewhere, to be noticed by someone, when this brought him nothing but more pain, more loneliness. Juan attempted to take his own life. Juan was finally brought into one of Flash Love's mentorship programs, where he met a man named Ivanov, my older brother. And Juan quickly discovered that there were people who still cared for him and who still wanted him to be here. If it wasn't for Flash Love, Juan may as well have been another pair of shoes on that pile. Juan's story is one of thousands of amazing stories that Flash Love has been able to be a part of. Flash Love has organized hundreds of teens from all over Clark County, from multiple different high schools, to come together, storm streets, adult care homes, and care for fatherless children. We've delivered donated cars, Thanksgiving dinners, and firewood to families in need. We've cleaned streets while feeding the homeless, sometimes at the same time. We're creating a culture that is making leaders of teens that then turn around and they create leaders of their peers. All the while, they're finding purpose in serving others like my grandfather did a long time ago. And deep down, they're discovering that they're creatures of love. So how can you help? I'm glad you asked. We need muscle, we need funding, we need mentors, we need volunteers that are ready to flip this entire city upside down. And if you choose to stay on the sidelines, well, that's okay too. Just keep an eye out for our symbol, the symbol of love and change. It's a big heart with a lightning bolt through it. And I hope that you catch our flash mob in action one day, storming these streets. But this time, not to wreak havoc on unsuspecting senior citizens and business owners, to change this community from the ground up. Ladies and gentlemen, it seems to me that if we find ourselves in a place where we're feeling purposeless, hopeless, afraid, confused, angry, if we simply shift the focus from ourselves and turn it onto others and serving others, in that we can always ignite a purpose in us and in our teens. Thank you. I appreciate that.